All right, so that we have an even playing field, I'm going to give you a definition of some basic terms that I'll be using for the next few minutes. Race is basically defined as a group of people categorized by their physical appearance. And so in this case, we're talking about skin color. And so basically the way it works, no matter what your actual genetic makeup may be, the part of you that determines your skin color is probably most important, especially when it comes to black and white. And so in some cultures, race can be determined by eye color, eye shape, height, et cetera, et cetera. But in this country, when we're talking about race, we're talking about skin color. Racism is basically, and race by itself is good. We all know that all races are beautiful. All God's children are beautiful. Racism is bad. Racism is the belief that my group, people who look like me, are better than your group, or people who look like you, or people who have your skin color. Prejudice is basically a preconceived notion that you have about a person based upon the color of their skin, or preconceived judgments that you have, or preconceived negative assumptions. Prejudice and racism are essentially, they're like nouns, meaning they're thoughts. They're not necessarily actions. It's just things that go along around in our head. Discrimination is the worst part of all of this, because discrimination is an actual verb. It's an actual action that is taken against the person based upon the color of their skin. Anyone can be a racist. If you feel like your group is better than another group, by definition, you are a racist. The difference, though, sometimes everyone can't discriminate. A lot of people aren't in positions to discriminate against a person, even though they may be racist. And so those are some of the terms we're going to be using. Systemic discrimination. What is systemic discrimination? That's basically a system, or the system in America that unfairly distributes resources, meaning it is a system set up with policies and practices that make it harder for, in this case, in this slide, it makes it harder for Black Americans in contrast to white Americans. And so why do we have systemic racism? Because all of the individual races that are situated in this country, they come together and they covertly and overtly begin to misdistribute resources. So I'm gonna say it another way. In America, and I don't have the exact numbers on top, but basically 52% of white Americans admit to having an aversion towards Black Americans, meaning for whatever reason, I'm not feeling them. I don't really mess with Black Americans. And so if you think about that, there's about 225 million white Americans. So essentially there's about 115 million white Americans in this country who don't particularly like Black people. And that's just the few who admitted it. I really think it's a much higher number than 52%. But what happens is those 115 million people, they work for the criminal justice system, they're within the education system, they're in the hospital systems, they're in all the different systems and organizations and institutions that make up this country. And so just because you go to work, right, doesn't mean you start to like Black people because you're at work. And so systemic discrimination works like this. Everybody has their biases, everybody shows up to work, and everybody treats Black people unfairly. And so at the end of the day, because of the system of racism, Black people are going to have less access to different resources and opportunities and things like that.